inch mortar. You measure a mortar and a howitzer in the diameter of the barrel in inches. So this is a 13-inch mortar, and this one, as well as 3 others, were made in France at the beginning of the French and Indian War. They were all sent over to North America. 2 went to Fortress Louisbourg, which is in Nova Scotia. You can still visit the site today, very beautiful place to be. And 2 came here. Well, of the 2 that are here, this one remains through the entire French and Indian War. In 1759, when the British were laid siege to the fort, one British officer recounts how this mortar was firing around a minute at them. These French artillerists were measuring how far away the British were, measuring the angle of the mortar wedge, measuring the wind resistance, measuring the amount of time it would take for the round to leave the barrel and reach the targets who would burst above them, not among them or in the ground, but above them, cutting the fuse accordingly, putting the appropriate amount of powder in, putting the appropriate amount of powder in the charge, placing the fuse, carrying their charge over, ramming it down, carrying the ball over, ramming it down, lighting the fuse, letting it go, watching it go, doing it again and adjusting accordingly, all in 1 minute.
How do they keep it cool then?
Pour water on it.
Oh, Molly pitcher kind of thing?
Kind of. But, so, after the French lose the fort, the British take it, the British also take this mortar. The mortar remains here in between the French and Indian War and the Revolution. When in 1775, Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen arrive, they take the fort with it, they take this mortar. Later in 1775, Continental Congress adopts the New England militia, forming the Continental Army. They place George Washington in charge, and he rides north, meets the army outside of Boston, and begins to lay siege to the town of Boston to try to get the British out. But Washington knows that to win a siege in the 18th century, you need heavy artillery, something the Americans don't have any of. So he sends a young bookkeeper turned artillery officer named Henry Knox here to Ticonderoga to take as many of these heavy guns as he can back with him to Boston. And Knox in total takes about 100 guns. And apart from the 2 upstairs now guarding the bathroom, the 3rd one we still have in our collection that he took is this mortar. And they would have taken these guns, put them on ox carts, they would have dragged them across frozen Lake George, eventually reaching the Mohawk River. And then from there they would cross the Berkshires and go to Springfield, Massachusetts, where they met up with the Turnpike. And from there haul them all the way to Boston. In the range of about 350 miles in total. And I know a lot of you guys might know the story of Knox taking the guns from Ticonderoga, and you always hear that, it's across snow and ice and in freezing conditions. I bet those soldiers would have loved for it to snow, because it was one of the warmest winters on record, so that was 350 miles of mud. But eventually, in the mid-January of 1776, this mortar reaches Boston, is set up on Dorchester Heights to the south of the city, and fires shells into the town. After the British leave the town, this mortar is selected to head north and help the fledgling American invasion of Canada, which at the time was besieging the city of Quebec, trying to convince the French Canadians to become the 14th colony. By the time this reaches Sorel, just north of the border, you find out the American army has been completely defeated outside the gates of the city, is retreating. You meet the army there, and the mortar comes all the way back down to Fort Ticonderoga. The story still isn't over that. In the summer of 1776, Benedict Arnold is in command here. He knows the next way the British are going to attack is by sailing down the lake. So he's building his own fleet to counter the British Navy. And he wants to put these heavy siege guns onto his ships to be able to match the British firepower. But before he can do that, he needs to test them to make sure they'll be okay on those old rickety wooden naval platforms. When he tests a gun in the 18th century, he used a process called proofing. Proofing is a very simple process. All you do is put 2 or 3 times the amount of gunpowder this would normally take, light it, make sure it all stays together. This one didn't pass. We have one account from an American artillery officer who said, yep, our old French 13-inch mortar split almost perfectly in half. Here's half the mortar. The story still isn't over because in 1776, just like today, Ticonderoga is on the frontier. And we didn't have kilns big enough to melt this back down. So they said, we still need to be able to use this huge chunk of iron. So they said, hey, this would be really great as ballast on one of the ships we're building to help the ship stay level in the water. So they put it as ballast on the Trumbull. And the Trumbull sails north in 76, fights in the Battle of Valcour Island, survives that battle, comes back down to Ticonderoga, where it's docked over the winter of 1776, 1777. And as we all know, on July 6, 1777, General Burgoyne's British Army arrives. They take the fort, with it they take the Trumbull. And the British sail the Trumbull up and down the lake, disrupting American shipping until the end of the war when they dock it in St. Jean in Quebec. After the Revolution, the ship rots away, and this sinks to the bottom of the northern end of the lake. But the story still isn't over because we have one more war to go on Lake Champlain. In 1812, a new war kicks off. The British are building a new fleet in St. John. They find this at the bottom of the lake, say, hey, this would be really great as ballast. Put it as ballast on one of their ships. And that ship and the rest of the British fleet sailed south in 1814, engages the United States Navy at the Battle of Plattsburgh, also called the Battle of Lake Champlain, where the entire British fleet on Lake Champlain is captured. They sailed this ship all the way down to Whitehall at the far southern end of Lake Champlain. After the War of 1812, that ship brought away this thing to the bottom of the channel. In 1949, it's found by archaeologists, and in 1950, it comes back to Fort Ticonderoga. So that is why this is my favorite object. But every single object we have here, whether it's half a mortar, a full mortar, a cannon, a musket, a button, has a story like that. With that, I'll say thank you very much for visiting the fort today. If you guys are interested